Everybody is doing good today. My name is Hunter McLeod, and today I'll be doing a presentation on sculpture design and brand recognition. So before we get started, a common element throughout my presentation is going to be ideas. So I want to go ahead and ask y'all, how powerful is an idea? To touch on that a little more, I think it's very important to point out how interconnected the world is today. I think, with events like COVID-19, we've seen, on a physical way with supply chains, how interconnected we are. And that's kind of been a negative because of some of the shortages. But aside from that, it's a very positive thing, and ideas follow that same path. Globalization has really taken over, on a large scale, and ideas are flowing like mad. It's really crazy once you start to see, how interconnected we are compared to several decades ago. Everything we interact with throughout our daily lives starts from an idea. And once I heard that, I never really kind of realized it. But it's easy to understand, but you never really kind of put much thought behind some of the objects we take for granted. Like the device you're using right now to watch this presentation, the furniture you're using, even the clothes you're wearing. All of that was meticulously designed by either a single designer or a team of designers, and they put their a level of passion to create what we use to throughout our lives. And I think that's actually kind of inspiring to think that you know that's possible. That something that we can mentally conjure up could be put into action and create a physical object that will be used by millions of people. So if you look at it from that lens, it's very interesting to kind of see the importance of design. So this presentation is going to cover design, and it's going to cover a very specific form of it, form of kodo design, which translates into English as soul in motion. This is the automotive design language that car manufacturer Mazda uses. So we're going to see how the inventor of this concept, Akubo Medea, implemented it, and the how it benefited Mazda in the long run. So before we get into that, let's look at some brands you might recognize already. So you got the Honda Civic over here. You got Toyota Camry. You got a Android logo, PlayStation logo, and Apple logo. So I think, starting with the cars, since that's going to be our common element throughout this presentation, these cars have been in America for a very long time. The Honda Civic is, they've kind of stayed more to their roots. They have, a very kind of not mundane, but it's very, very conservative with how they design their cars. I think it's a very attractive looking car, and they stayed true to the Civic's roots. I think without looking at the Honda logo, or you can tell that's a Civic because of how the size, the shape, everything about it. Now Toyota, they've kind of gone a little wild here in the last couple of years with the Toyota Camry, but still they've implemented their corporate design, and I think due to the popularity of these cars, you can see them on the road today, and without looking in for logos, you can identify their car based off of the physical design, and then that's very popular. Look at the logos at the bottom down here. Notice how not a single one of them have any words. They don't say Android. They don't actually say PlayStation. They don't say Apple. We just know this based off the logo. That's how powerful they are. You see an Apple logo, oh, it's expensive, and how much you pay for that. It's a very, it carries a level of prestige. It's a popularity contest too. Uh, Android has the same. They might be more into technical details and stuff like that. How much like the actual specs of the phone or the tablet or whatever. So each little brand has its own little kind of like market and kind of like niche that it attracts based off of the company and what it represents. But all of that can be symbolized by just a logo. It's very impressive. It's also very kind of like we as consumers need to be aware of this. So let's talk about Mazda's past real quick before we get into what actually took place with the Kodo design. So Mazda, they've been around forever, pretty much just as long as Honda and Toyota. They're a world-renowned company. They're mainly known for their sports cars, and that's what they got. That's what they started off doing with sports cars. And a lot of car enthusiasts, they're people who generally have a lot of Mazda cars that would like to drive or own. But then the oil crisis in the 80s happened, and sports car demand plummeted because people wanted cheaper cars that were good on gas. So sports cars not as popular in the 80s, and then that kind of carried on. They kind of got a little bit of research, but then the economic collapse of 2008 happened, and people were back wanting, fuel efficient, dependable cars. And Mazda was kind of having a kind of tough times finding a good, like, mass market niche. Their niche was sports cars. They needed to go mass market with attracting a very wide range of consumers. And that's kind of hard to do when your car lineup kind of doesn't have a corporate look like the Honda or Toyota did. So they're going to have to get a corporate look, and that they tried, but they kept getting designers from Europe who wasn't putting a whole lot of passion behind it, and they wasn't staying with the company too long. I think the last European designer before Akio Medea took over only lasted about 5 years, and that's not a long enough time to implement anything. And it was really showing a tough time for Mazda to find a brand identity. So then Akio Medea took over, and he actually was with the company the whole time. He started working for Mazda as soon as he left, graduated college. So he wanted to implement his design philosophy called Kodo Design, which again translates into English as soul in motion. He wanted that to be the brand identity across all their lineup, like every single car they make. He wants that to be somewhere like implemented into the car. And the very first concept to come out was in 2010, and they called it the Shinari concept vehicle. You can see it in the top picture, and then the hand drawn illustration by Akuo Medea at the bottom. And that was the very first Kodo design language car. Akuo Medea wanted to. He was inspired by nature, and he wanted to implement that into the car because it represents a level of fierceness, but also kind of like sleek, and you can see the lines of the contour. It looks like it was put in a wind tunnel, and the wind just kind of sculpted the car. It's very like aggressive, but also sleek at the same time, and I think that's exactly what he was going for. Another thing that I think is worth pointing out is that Mazda is one of the few companies today that actually will make a sculpture model of each car before it's mass produced. To look at the design, to look at the sharp lines and edges of what attracts car buyers today. And I think that's pretty impressive, and kind of you know it drives home the point that I'm trying to make here, that a car is art. It's a form of art, and that's very interesting to look at and see, because what we drive and what we buy and what we like all kind of defines us. Just like some of the other items I mentioned earlier, like our clothes. Cars the same thing. It's the work of many different ideas, and they all kind of come together to create something that each person kind of aligns themselves with. So Akiko Medea implemented that design language, but in 2010 with that Shinari concept, and then in under 10 years, he was able to have Kodo design all throughout Mazda's lineup, from their two-door sports car to their four-door sedan to their large SUV to their mid-size SUV. Every car has some form of Kodo design, and I think that's nothing short of impressive. I think that kind of drives home the point of how powerful an idea is. Of course, he's got a village, with him at Mazda. He's the head designer, but he's got people under him, and of course, everybody kind of puts in uh, their own ideas. But he came up with code of design, and he wanted that to be the brand identity of Mazda today. And I think that's very inspiring to see how that can be accomplished in such a short amount of time when you're talking about the mass manufacture of vehicles. And I want to ask people and viewers, I want to know if you see, I see quite a few Mazdas around town because we have a local dealership. Have people started paying more attention to Mazda? Have people seen, can you recognize Mazda based off the look without looking for a logo or anything else. I'd like to know that. It's very interesting to see how they went from not having too much of a brand identity in the past to now they're almost instantly recognizable. You know, you could be not a car person at all, and you can look at the lines, the angles, and just the overall attention to detail and recognize, hey, that's a Mazda without even looking for a logo. I think that's very a good accomplishment, and it definitely paid off for Mazda in the long run because their sales are up very high, and they've almost kind of like gone up market, and they're competing with companies that they've never competed with in the past. So it's very inspiring, and I think the future is going to look very bright for Mazda as a company. So that's it. So I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. I've really enjoyed this class, and I hope you all have a great Christmas break, and hope to see some of y'all next year. Goodbye.